Dead Nausicans lay strewn across the ground, their brains splattered by high-caliber rounds, as the legendary human sniper Lawrence Holmes sat at a dimly lit bar on the Zephyr 6 space station, his weathered hands wrapped around a glass of whiskey. A young Nausicaan soldier named Keed cautiously approached the grizzled veteran, his four eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration. "Sir, I've heard stories about you. They say you're the deadliest marksman in the galaxy. I was hoping maybe you could teach me a thing or two." Lawrence's steely gaze locked onto Kid, sizing him up. "Kid, sniping ain't just about pulling a trigger. It's about patience, discipline, and knowing when to take the shot. Buy me a drink, and I might just tell you a story." Kid eagerly signaled the bartender for another round. As the drinks arrived, Lawrence leaned back in his chair, his mind drifting to a distant memory. "It was during the Battle of Helios Prime," he began, his voice low and gravelly. "The Nausicans had blockaded the planet, their ships choking the skies while their troops laid waste to our last stronghold. The Terran Defense Force was in shambles, running on fumes and desperation. That's when High Command called me in for a mission that could change everything." Lawrence took a long swig of his whiskey, the ice clinking against the glass. "They wanted me to infiltrate the Nausicaan command ship and take out their leader, a ruthless bastard named Krazak. It was a one-way trip, but I was the only one with the skills to pull it off. If I failed, humanity would fall." Keed leaned forward, hanging on every word. "But how did you get on board? Nausicaan ships are heavily guarded and their sensors can detect any human life signs." A grim smile tugged at Lawrence's lips. "That's the thing about us humans, kid. We're full of surprises, and Krazak, he was about to learn that the hard way." As the old sniper delved deeper into his tale, the bar faded away, replaced by the cold, unforgiving depths of space and the looming specter of humanity's last stand against the Nausicaan Empire. Lawrence takes a long drag from his cigarette, the embers glowing in the dimly lit bar. "Just as I was about to pull the trigger, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and I could hear the pounding of boots on metal as Nausicaan soldiers rushed to their stations. Somehow they'd discovered my presence." He shakes his head, a rueful smile playing on his lips. "I knew I had to act fast. Krazak was already on the move, barking orders at his guards. I watched him through my scope, my finger hovering over the trigger. But then, something unexpected happened." The old sniper leans forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Krazak's second-in-command, a vicious Nausicaan named Tharg, burst into the room. He was shouting something about a human intruder, and I could see the fear in Krazak's eyes. They knew I was coming for them." Lawrence takes another sip of his drink, the ice clinking against the glass. "I had a split second to make a decision. I could take the shot and hope for the best, or I could wait for a better opportunity. But with the alarms blaring and the soldiers closing in, I knew I might not get another chance." He looks up at Keed, his eyes hardening with resolve. "So I did what I had to do. I took a deep breath, steadied my aim, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against my shoulder, and I watched as the high-caliber round tore through the grate, straight towards Krazak's head." The old sniper pauses, the weight of the moment hanging in the air. But just as the bullet was about to find its mark, Tharg threw himself in front of Krazak, taking the hit instead. The big Nausicaan went down hard, his body crumpling to the floor. Krazak looked shocked, but he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his own weapon and started firing blindly into the ceiling, trying to flush me out. Lawrence shakes his head, a grim smile on his face. "I knew I had to get out of there fast. I crawled back through the vents, the sound of gunfire echoing behind me. I could hear Krazak's enraged shouts, promising to hunt me down and make me pay for what I'd done." He takes a final drag from his cigarette, blowing out a plume of smoke. "I managed to make it back to my stolen scout ship, but I knew I wasn't out of the woods yet. Krazak would be coming for me, and he wouldn't rest until he had his revenge. But I also knew that I had dealt a blow to his command structure, and that might just give humanity the chance it needed to turn the tide of the war." Lawrence looks up at Keed, his eyes glinting with the weight of his next words. "But that was only the beginning of my mission. I still had to find a way to finish the job and take out Krazak once and for all." And that's when I realized I needed to change my approach, to hit the Nausicaans where they least expected it. Lawrence takes a long drag from his cigarette, the smoke curling around his weathered face as he continues his tale. As I flew back towards Helios Prime, I realized I had a squad of Nausicaan fighters on my tail. They were fast, heavily armed, and out for blood. I knew I couldn't outrun them, so I had to outfight them. He leans forward, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the dogfight. What followed was a deadly dance of lasers and missiles, as I weaved and dodged through the debris field around the planet. I used every trick I knew, every maneuver I had learned in my years of flying, but the Nausicaans were relentless. Lawrence's hands tighten on his glass, the ice clinking against the sides as he relives the desperate battle. My shields were failing, my weapons were running low, and I had a trio of fighters closing in on my tail. I thought I was done for. But then I remembered a little trick I had learned from an old friend in the Terran Defense Force. He grins, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I cut my engines and let the Nausicaans overshoot me. Then I fired my thrusters and came up behind them. They never saw it coming. I took out all three with a single burst of my laser cannons. Lawrence chuckles, shaking his head at the memory. I limped back to base, my fighter barely holding together. But I had done it. I had killed Krazak and dealt a blow to the Nausicaan Empire that they would never forget. He looks up at Keed, his eyes shining with pride. And that, my young friend, is why you should never mess with a human sniper. We may not have the most advanced technology or the strongest ships, but we have the skill, the determination, and the sheer audacity to pull off the impossible. Lawrence raises his glass in a toast, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth, to the Terran Defense Force and to the brave men and women who fight for humanity among the stars. He takes a deep swig, then sets his glass down, the ice clinking against the sides. Caed leans forward, his four eyes wide with wonder. That's an incredible story, sir, but what happened next? How did the Nausicaans respond to Krazak's death? Lawrence's smile fades, his expression growing somber. Well, kid, that's where things got really interesting. You see, the Nausicaans had never been defeated like that before, and they didn't take kindly to a human sniper taking out their leader. Keed leans forward, his four eyes wide with wonder. But how did you survive, sir? The Nausicaans are relentless hunters, and their technology is far superior to ours. How did you evade them for so long? Lawrence takes a deep drag from his cigarette, the smoke curling around his weathered face. It wasn't easy, kid. I had to use every trick in the book, and even then I barely stayed one step ahead of them. He stares into the distance, his mind drifting back to those harrowing days. I remember one time I was hiding out on a remote mining colony, working as a security guard under a false name. I thought I was safe, but then I saw a Nausicaan bounty hunter in the local bar, showing my picture to the patrons. Lawrence's hand tightens around his glass, his knuckles turning white. I knew I had to get out of there fast. I slipped out the back door and made my way to the spaceport, but the bounty hunter was hot on my heels. I could hear his heavy footsteps echoing behind me as I ran. He takes another sip of his drink, the ice clinking against the glass. I managed to steal a small freighter and blast off, just as the bounty hunter reached the landing pad. I thought I was in the clear, but then I saw a Nausicaan warship drop out of hyperspace right in front of me. Lawrence's eyes narrow as he remembers the heart-pounding chase that followed. They opened fire immediately, their lasers scorching the hull of my ship. I juked and weaved, trying to evade their shots, but it was only a matter of time before they wore me down. He leans forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. I knew I had to get creative. I spotted a nearby asteroid field and gunned the engines, heading straight for it. The Nausicaans followed me in, their ships weaving through the tumbling rocks like angry hornets. Lawrence's voice rises with excitement as he recounts his daring escape. I flew deeper into the field, dodging and weaving through the asteroids. The Nausicaans couldn't get a clear shot, but they were relentless. They kept coming, even as their ships were battered and torn by the jagged rocks. He grins, his eyes sparkling with mischief. But I had a trick up my sleeve. I had rigged the freighter with a remote detonator, and I was just waiting for the right moment. When the Nausicans were right on my tail, I triggered the detonator and ejected in an escape pod. Lawrence chuckles, shaking his head at the memory. The freighter exploded, taking out 2 of the Nausicaan ships in the blast. The rest were caught in the shockwave, tumbling out of control and smashing into the asteroids. I watched from the safety of my escape pod as the Nausicaan warship limped away, its hull battered and smoking. He takes a final drag from his cigarette, blowing out a plume of smoke. But even that wasn't the end of it. The Nausicaans kept coming, no matter how many times I outsmarted them. They were like a pack of hungry wolves, always nipping at my heels. Lawrence looks up at Keed, his eyes hard and determined. But I never gave up. I couldn't. The fate of humanity was at stake, and I was the only one who could stop the Nausicaans. I had to keep fighting, no matter the cost. He drains the last of his drink, slamming the glass down on the table. And that's what I did. For months I played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the Nausicaans, always staying one step ahead, always looking for a way to strike back. Lawrence's voice drops to a low growl, his eyes smoldering with intensity. But I knew I couldn't keep running forever. I needed a plan, a way to take the fight to the Nausicaans and end their threat once and for all. And that's when I came up with my most audacious mission yet. As Lawrence leans back in his chair, the dim light of the bar casting shadows across his weathered face, Cade finds himself leaning forward, hanging on the old sniper's every word. The tale of the assassination of the Nausicaan emperor has left him breathless, his heart pounding with a mixture of awe and disbelief. "But how did you do it?" Cade asks, his voice barely above a whisper. "How did you infiltrate the palace with all those guards and security measures in place?" Lawrence chuckles, a glint of mischief in his eye. "It wasn't easy, kid. But when you've been in the game as long as I have, you learn a few tricks." He takes another sip of his drink, savoring the burn of the alcohol as it slides down his throat. "I spent weeks preparing for that mission, scouting out the palace, memorizing the guard rotations, studying the Emperor's habits. I even managed to bribe a few of the servants to slip me information about the layout of the place." Lawrence's eyes grow distant as he remembers the long hours spent crouched in the shadows, watching and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "I had to be patient. One wrong move, and the whole plan would fall apart. But I knew I had to succeed. The fate of humanity was riding on my shoulders." He shakes his head, a rueful smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "When the day of the mission finally arrived, I was ready. I had my rifle, my smoke grenades, and a heart full of determination. I knew I might not make it out alive, but I was willing to take that risk." Lawrence's voice drops to a low growl as he describes the moment of truth. "I waited until the Emperor was in the middle of his speech, his guards distracted by the crowd. Then I made my move. I slipped through the secret entrance I had discovered during my scouting missions, my rifle at the ready." He closes his eyes, reliving the heart-pounding rush of adrenaline as he moved through the palace corridors, taking out guards with silent, deadly precision. "I had to be quick. I knew I only had a few minutes before the security system came back online. But I was a man on a mission, and nothing was going to stop me." Lawrence's eyes snap open, fixing Cade with a piercing stare. "When I reached the Emperor's chambers, I knew I had to act fast. I took up position on the balcony, my rifle aimed directly at his head. And then I waited for the perfect moment." He takes a deep breath, his voice growing cold as he describes the final fatal shot. "The Emperor was in mid-sentence when I pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through his skull, splattering his brains across the throne room floor. For a moment, everything was silent. And then all hell broke loose." Lawrence's voice rises with excitement as he recounts his daring escape from the palace. Guards were swarming the place, shouting orders and searching for the assassin, but I was already gone, slipping through the shadows like a ghost. Jax had done his job well, wiping all traces of our presence from the palace computers. He grins, a fierce light in his eyes. By the time the Nausicaans realized what had happened, I was already back on my ship blasting off into space. And the rest, as they say, is history. Lawrence drains the last of his drink, slamming the glass down on the table with a decisive thunk. The Nausicaan Empire crumbled after that. Without their emperor to hold them together, they turned on each other like a pack of rabid dogs. The Terran Defense Force moved in to clean up the mess, and within a year, the Nausicaan threat was nothing more than a bad memory. He leans back in his chair, a satisfied smile on his face. And that, my young friend, is how a single human sniper brought down an entire alien empire. With skill, determination, and a little bit of luck, there's nothing we can't accomplish when we set our minds to it. Keed nods slowly, his mind reeling with the implications of Lawrence's tale. He had always known that humans were a force to be reckoned with, but he had never realized just how far they were willing to go to protect their own. As Lawrence stands up from the table, stretching his arms over his head, Keed finds himself filled with a newfound sense of purpose. He knows that he has a long way to go before he can even hope to match the old sniper's skills, but he is determined to try. "Thank you, sir," he says, his voice filled with gratitude and respect. "Thank you for sharing your story with me. I promise I won't forget what you've taught me." Lawrence claps him on the shoulder, a warm smile on his face. "I know you won't, kid. You've got the heart of a warrior just like me. Just remember, no matter how tough things get out there, never give up, never surrender, and always, always keep your aim true." With a final nod, the old sniper turns and strides out of the bar, his rifle slung over his shoulder and a spring in his step. Keed watches him go, a sense of awe and admiration swelling in his chest. He knows that he has just heard a tale that will stay with him for the rest of his life. A tale of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. A tale that will inspire him to be the best soldier he can be, no matter the odds. And as he sits there in the dim light of the bar, Keed can't help but smile. For he knows that as long as there are men like Lawrence Holmes out there, fighting for the cause of humanity, the galaxy will never be the same again. Keid's heart races as he sprints through the dimly lit streets of the Orion colony, the acrid smell of smoke and blaster fire filling his nostrils. The colony is in chaos, with buildings crumbling and flames licking at the night sky. Keed can hear the screams of civilians and the shouts of Nausicaan soldiers in the distance, but he pushes the sounds out of his mind, focusing on his mission. As he rounds a corner, Keed spots a group of Nausicaan soldiers up ahead, their weapons trained on a group of cowering civilians. Keed's hand tightens on his sniper rifle, and he quickly ducks behind a nearby wall, his mind racing as he formulates a plan. He knows he has to act fast before the Nausicaans can harm the civilians. He takes a deep breath, steeling himself, and then leaps out from behind cover, his rifle at the ready. The Nausicaans are caught off guard, and Keed takes advantage of their surprise. He fires off a series of quick, precise shots, each one finding its mark with deadly accuracy. The soldiers fall one by one, their bodies crumpling to the ground in a heap. Keid doesn't stop to admire his handiwork. He races over to the civilians, ushering them to safety and directing them towards the evacuation point. They look at him with a mixture of fear and gratitude, their eyes wide and their faces streaked with tears. Keid nods, his jaw set with determination. "Just doing my job, ma'am. Now get to safety and don't look back." As the civilians hurry away, Keid turns his attention back to the task at hand. He knows he has to find the Nausicaan leader, the one responsible for this attack. He scans the surrounding buildings, his eyes narrowing as he searches for any sign of his target. And then he sees it, a heavily fortified building at the center of the colony, guarded by a squad of elite Nausicaan soldiers. Keid knows that's where he'll find his target, and he sets off towards it at a run, his rifle bouncing against his back with each step. As he approaches the building, Keid can see the Nausicaan guards patrolling the perimeter, their weapons held at the ready. He knows he can't take them head-on. He's outnumbered and outgunned, but he also knows he has the element of surprise on his side. Keid quickly scales a nearby building, his fingers finding purchase on the rough stone, as he hauls himself up to the rooftop. From this vantage point, he has a clear view of the guards below, and he takes a moment to study their movements, looking for any weaknesses in their defenses. And then he sees it, A small gap in their patrols, a brief window of opportunity. Cade lines up his shot, his finger hovering over the trigger. He takes a deep breath, steadying his aim, and then fires. The first guard drops to the ground, a neat hole in his forehead. Cade quickly shifts his aim to the next one and then the next, each shot ringing out in the still air. By the time the last guard falls, the building is undefended, and Cade knows he has his opening. He rappels down from the rooftop, his boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. He sprints towards the entrance of the building, his rifle at the ready, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows that the Nausicaan leader will be heavily guarded, but he's prepared for that. He's spent years training for moments like this, and he's not going to let anything stand in his way. As Cade bursts through the doors of the building, he's immediately met with a hail of blaster fire. He dives for cover behind a nearby pillar, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He can hear the Nausicaan soldiers shouting to each other, their voices filled with rage and hatred. But Cade doesn't let their words get to him. He takes a deep breath, steels himself, and then leaps out from behind cover, his rifle blazing. He dodges and weaves through the Nausicaan soldiers, taking them out with quick, precise shots. He uses the environment to his advantage, ducking behind cover and luring his enemies into traps. And through it all, he never loses sight of his target, the Nausicaan leader who watches the battle from a balcony above. Cade knows that if he can take out the leader, the rest of the Nausicaan forces will crumble. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Cade finds himself face to face with the leader himself. The Nausicaan is a towering figure, clad in heavy armor and wielding a massive blaster rifle. He sneers at Cade, his eyes filled with hatred and rage. "You think you can stop me, human?" he growls, his voice dripping with venom. "I will crush you like an insect, and then I will burn your pathetic colony to the ground." Cade doesn't bother to respond. He simply raises his rifle, lines up his shot, and fires. The leader's head snaps back, a neat hole in his forehead, and he crumples to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. Cade stands over the fallen leader, his rifle still smoking, and takes a deep breath. He knows that the battle is far from over, but he also knows that he's struck a decisive blow against the Nausicaan remnant. With their leader gone, they'll be disorganized and demoralized, easy pickings for the human forces that are even now rushing to the colony's aid. As Cade steps out of the building and into the sunlight, he can't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. He's faced his first real test as a sniper, and he's passed with flying colors. He knows that there will be other challenges ahead, other enemies to face, but he also knows that he's ready for them. He's a human sniper, a warrior of skill and determination, and he'll never back down from a fight. As he makes his way back to his ship, Cade's communicator beeps once more. It's another message from Lawrence, short and to the point. "Well done, kid. I knew you had it in you. Meet me at the spaceport when you're done cleaning up. I've got a new mission for us, and I have a feeling you're going to like it." Cade grins as he reads the message, his heart swelling with pride and excitement. He knows that he's just taken his first step on a long and dangerous path, but he also knows that he's not walking it alone. He's part of a proud tradition of human snipers, warriors who never give up and never back down. And with Lawrence by his side, he knows that there's nothing they can't achieve. As Cade boards his ship and prepares for takeoff, he can't help but feel a sense of anticipation for the challenges that lie ahead. He's ready to take on the galaxy, one shot at a time, and he knows that he'll never stop fighting for what he believes in. As the ship touches down at the spaceport, Cade feels a surge of anticipation. He knows that Lawrence has something big planned, and he can't wait to find out what it is. As he disembarks from the ship, his eyes land on Lawrence standing on the tarmac, surrounded by 5 other heavily armed humans. Lawrence grins as Cade approaches. "Cade, meet your new team. I handpicked each one of them for this mission. They'll have your back no matter what." Cade studies his new comrades, a grizzled veteran with a scar, a young female sniper, and 3 battle-hardened men. He nods, knowing he's in good company. "What's the mission?" Lawrence leads them into a nearby command center. Inside, a holographic star map is projected on a central table. "This is the Zephyr system," Lawrence explains, zooming in on a cluster of planets. It's a key location for the Terran Defense Force, but it's become a hotbed of pirate activity. Intel shows that a powerful pirate lord named Grakthar has set up a base on one of the moons. He's been using it to launch raids on human shipping lanes. Keed's mind races with possibilities. Taking out a pirate lord won't be easy, but it's a challenge he's ready for. So what's the plan? We'll insert onto the moon's surface in a stealth dropship, Lawrence says, tracing a path on the map. Once we're on the ground, we'll make our way to Grakthar's stronghold and take him out. It won't be easy. He's got an army of pirates and mercenaries guarding him. But with your skills and the team's expertise, I know we can do it. Excitement surges through Keed. This is the kind of mission he's trained for his whole life, a true test of his skills and resolve. He looks around at his teammates, seeing the same determination in their eyes. Let's do this. The team wastes no time preparing. They spend days training together, honing their skills into a cohesive unit. Keed leads sniper training, sharing techniques he learned from Lawrence and pushing the others to their limits. He's impressed by their skill and dedication, knowing they'll be a formidable force. Finally, the day of the mission arrives. The team boards the stealth dropship, weapons locked and loaded, hearts filled with determination. Keed takes his position in the sniper nest, eye glued to his rifle's scope as they approach the pirate moon. The ship shudders and shakes as they enter the moon's thin atmosphere, but Keed keeps his aim steady. He knows every shot counts. He won't let the team down. The ship touches down on the barren surface. The team quickly disembarks, fanning out into defensive positions. Keed takes up position on a nearby ridge, rifle at the ready, as the rest of the team advances towards the pirate stronghold. At first, everything goes according to plan. The team makes steady progress across the rocky landscape, using the terrain for cover and concealment, but as they draw closer to the stronghold, they start encountering resistance. Pirate scouts and sentries appear on the horizon, weapons trained on the approaching humans. Keed knows it's time to do what he does best. He lines up his first shot, takes a deep breath, finger hovering over the trigger. He waits for the perfect moment, when the sentry's head aligns perfectly with his crosshairs. Then he fires. The shot rings out across the barren landscape. The sentry drops, a neat hole in his forehead. Keed quickly shifts aim to the next target, and the next, shots ringing out in rapid succession. The rest of the team is advancing now, weapons blazing as they engage the pirates in close combat. Keed provides covering fire from the ridge, taking out pirates trying to flank or outmaneuver his teammates. It's a fierce and brutal battle, with casualties on both sides. But Keed knows they can't afford to fail. The fate of the Terran Defense Force and countless innocent lives hangs in the balance. Finally, after what feels like an eternity of fighting, the team reaches the entrance to the pirate stronghold. Through his scope, Keed can see Grakthar himself, a massive, hulking alien with a cruel smile. This is the moment of truth, the chance to take out the pirate lord and end his reign of terror once and for all. But as Keed lines up his shot, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. Grakthar is holding a human hostage, a young woman in a Terran Defense Force uniform. Keed instantly recognizes her. It's Ava, his old friend and fellow sniper. Grakthar has a blaster pressed to her head. Keed knows he'll kill her without hesitation if the team makes a move. Panic grips Keed. He can't let Ava die, but he also can't let Grakthar escape. He has to make a choice, and fast. Keed takes a deep breath, eye fixed on Grakthar's cruel smile. He knows what he has to do. Lining up his shot, crosshairs hovering over the pirate lord's head, he takes one last look at Ava, her eyes wide with fear and desperation. Then he pulls the trigger. The shot rings out across the battlefield. Grakthar's head snaps back, a neat hole in his forehead. He crumples to the ground, grip on Ava loosening as he falls. Ava stumbles forward, face a mask of shock and relief. Keed feels a surge of adrenaline, heart pounding in his chest. He's just made the most difficult shot of his life. But it was worth it. He's saved his friend and struck a decisive blow against the pirate lord, all in one split-second decision. As the rest of the team secures the stronghold and rounds up the remaining pirates, Kaid makes his way down from the ridge, rifle slung over his shoulder. Grateful faces and congratulatory slaps on the back greet him, but he only has eyes for one person. Ava rushes forward and throws her arms around him, face streaked with tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispers, voice choked with emotion. "You saved my life." Kaid just nods, his own eyes stinging with unshed tears. He knows he was just doing his job, but this moment will stay with him forever. He's a human sniper, a warrior of skill and determination, but also a friend and protector, and he'll never stop fighting for the people he loves, no matter the cost. As the team heads back to the dropship, Lawrence falls into step beside Kaid, a proud smile on his face. "You did good, kid," he says, clapping Kaid on the shoulder. "I always knew you had it in you." Kaid nods, mind already racing with thoughts of the future. He knows this is just the beginning, that there will be other missions and challenges ahead, but he also knows he's ready for them, that he'll face them with the same skill and determination he's shown today. He's a human sniper, a legend in the making, and the galaxy better watch out. As Kaid's ship touches down on the landing pad of the Terran Defense Force base, he is greeted by a sea of cheering faces and applauding hands. The news of his victory over the xenomorphs has spread like wildfire, and he is hailed as a hero, a savior of the human race. But even as he steps out of his ship, his face weary and his body battered, Kaid knows that his mission is far from over. He has seen the true face of evil, the twisted and malevolent intelligence that lurks at the heart of the xenomorph threat, and he knows that he cannot rest until it is destroyed, once and for all. In the days that follow, Kaid throws himself into his work with a single-minded determination. He pores over every scrap of intel and data he can find on the xenomorphs, searching for any clue that might lead him to their source. He interviews survivors of previous attacks, their faces haunted, and their voices trembling as they recount the horrors they've witnessed. He studies the autopsies of the creatures they've managed to kill, marveling at their twisted biology and their uncanny ability to adapt and evolve. And then finally, he finds it. A single cryptic message hidden in the depths of a derelict ship's black box recorder, a set of coordinates leading to a remote and uncharted system on the edge of known space. Kaid knows that this is it, the key to unlocking the mystery of the xenomorphs and ending their reign of terror once and for all, and he knows that he cannot do it alone. He gathers a team of the best and brightest the Terran Defense Force has to offer, each one a specialist in their field and a warrior in their own right. There's Ava, the sniper who owes Kaid her life, her eyes sharp and her aim true. There's Jax, the hacker who can infiltrate any system, his fingers flying over the keys with a speed and precision that seems almost inhuman. There's Raza, the demolitions expert who can turn anything into a bomb, his face always split by a manic grin. And there's Sarge, the grizzled veteran who's seen more combat than any of them, his body a tapestry of scars and his eyes haunted by the ghosts of battles past. Together they set out for the uncharted system, their ship loaded with enough firepower to take on an army. They spend long hours in the training room, honing their skills and learning to work as a single, cohesive unit. And then, after what feels like an eternity of preparation and anticipation, they finally arrive at their destination. But as they drop out of hyperspace and approach the coordinates, they realize that they're not alone. A massive alien ship looms before them, its hull bristling with weapons and its energy signature unlike anything they've ever seen before. It's a behemoth of a vessel, easily dwarfing their own ship and making them feel like insects in comparison. Kaid feels a chill run down his spine as he stares at the ship, his mind racing with the possibilities of what horrors might lie within. He knows that this must be the source of the xenomorphs, the evil that he's been searching for all this time. With a deep breath and a nod to his team, Kaid gives the order to approach the ship. They dock with the alien vessel, their own ship looking like a tiny parasite next to its massive bulk. As they step onto the alien ship, the team is immediately assaulted by a sense of wrongness. The air is thick and heavy, and the walls seem to pulse with a sickening organic rhythm. It's like stepping into the belly of some gigantic beast, and Cade can feel his skin crawling with revulsion. But they press on, their weapons at the ready and their hearts pounding in their chests. They move through the twisting corridors of the ship, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. And then, without warning, the xenomorphs are upon them. They come from every direction, their black, chitinous bodies gleaming in the dim light, and their fanged maws dripping with saliva. The team opens fire, their weapons chattering and flashing as they pour everything they have into the horde of monsters. They fight with a desperate fury, knowing that every second counts, and that any hesitation could mean death. They push deeper into the ship, battling their way through wave after wave of xenomorphs. The creatures seem to be endless, their numbers replenishing as fast as the team can cut them down. And then, after what feels like an eternity of fighting, they finally reach the heart of the ship. It's a vast, cavernous chamber filled with pulsing machinery and glowing screens. And there, at the center of it all, is the truth that Cade has been searching for. The xenomorphs are not the product of some twisted alien intelligence, but the creation of human science gone horribly wrong. Decades ago, a group of rogue scientists stumbled upon a derelict spacecraft on the edge of known space. Inside, they found the remains of an ancient alien race and the genetic material that would become the building blocks of the xenomorphs. They brought the material back to their secret lab and began experimenting, splicing together human and alien DNA to create a new breed of super soldier. But the experiments went wrong, the creatures they created turning on their creators and escaping into the stars. Now the xenomorphs have spread like a plague across the galaxy, infecting and destroying everything in their path, and at the heart of it all, guiding their every move, is a twisted and malevolent intelligence born of human ambition and alien malice. Cade and his team can only stare in horror at the revelation, their minds reeling with the implications of what they've discovered. But they have no time to dwell on it, for the final battle is upon them. The Queen Xenomorph rises from the depths of the chamber, her massive body towering over them like a living mountain. She is a nightmare made flesh, her every movement a symphony of death and destruction. The team throws everything they have at her, their weapons and their will, but it's not enough. One by one they fall, their bodies broken and their screams echoing in the vastness of the chamber. Ava is the last to fall, her body torn and bleeding as she staggers towards the Queen. With a final desperate cry, she detonates the explosive strapped to her chest, taking the monster with her in a blinding flash of light. Cade is thrown back by the force of the explosion, his body battered and his mind reeling. He staggers to his feet, his vision blurred and his ears ringing. He looks around the chamber, at the twisted remains of the xenomorphs and the shattered bodies of his team. He feels a sense of despair wash over him, a realization of the true scope of the horror he's uncovered. But he knows that he cannot give up, that he cannot let their sacrifice be in vain. He staggers back to his ship, his heart heavy with the weight of his loss and the knowledge of what he must do. He knows that the Terran Defense Force will want to study the xenomorphs, to unlock the secrets of their creation and use them for their own ends. But he also knows that he cannot let that happen, that the xenomorphs must be destroyed once and for all, no matter the cost. So Cade makes a decision, one that will haunt him for the rest of his days. He overloads the reactor core of the alien ship, setting it to detonate in a massive explosion that will vaporize everything on board. And then, with a heavy heart, he turns his own ship towards the nearest star, plotting a course that will take him and the last of the xenomorphs into the heart of the sun itself. As the alien ship explodes behind him, Cade can feel the heat of the star growing stronger and stronger. He knows that this is the end, that he will not survive the inferno that awaits him. He has given his life for the greater good, for the safety and security of the galaxy itself, and he knows that somewhere out there in the stars his legacy will live on. For he was a human sniper, a warrior of skill and determination, a legend who fought to the very end and never ever backed down, and though he may be gone, his spirit will live on in the hearts and minds of all those who remember his sacrifice and the courage and valor of the human race that he embodied. As Kaid's ship plummets towards the heart of the star, the heat and radiation grow unbearable. Sweat pours down his face, his skin blistering and cracking under the onslaught. He grits his teeth, his hands clenched around the controls as he prepares for the end. But then, just as the ship begins to break apart, a blinding light envelops him. It fills the cockpit, searing his eyes and burning his skin. Kaid feels a wrenching sensation, as if he's being pulled apart atom by atom, stretched and twisted through the fabric of space and time. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it's over. Kaid opens his eyes, blinking in confusion, as he finds himself back on the Terran Defense Force base. He's surrounded by a crowd of concerned faces, his superiors, his fellow soldiers, all staring at him in shock and disbelief. At first, Kaid thinks it must have been a dream, a vivid hallucination brought on by the stress and trauma of his mission. But as he looks down at his hands, he sees that they're still covered in the blood and gore of the xenomorphs he fought. The acrid stench of their acid blood fills his nostrils, and he knows that it was all too real. In the days and weeks that follow, Kaid is subjected to a barrage of tests and examinations. The best minds of the Terran Defense Force pore over every detail of his story, analyzing the incredible technology and biology of the xenomorphs. They press him for every scrap of information, every memory he can dredge up from his shattered psyche. But Kaid is haunted by his experiences, the loss of his team, the terrible secret at the heart of the xenomorph threat. It all weighs heavily on his mind. He withdraws into himself, becoming distant and moody, pushing away those who try to help him. He spends long hours in his quarters, staring at the walls, lost in his own dark thoughts. The faces of his fallen comrades swim before his eyes, their screams echoing in his ears. He sees the twisted, chitinous forms of the xenomorphs, their eyeless faces leering at him from the shadows. And then, just when he thinks he can take no more, he receives a message. It comes from an anonymous source, untraceable and encrypted, a set of coordinates leading to a remote and uninhabited planet on the edge of known space. And with it, a single line of text: "The truth awaits." Kaid stares at the message, his heart pounding in his chest. He knows he should report it to his superiors. Let the Terran Defense Force handle whatever new threat or mystery lies waiting at those coordinates. But something in him rebels at the thought, some deep-seated instinct, some primal drive that tells him this is his mission, his destiny. So in the dead of night, Kaid slips out of his quarters and makes his way to the hangar bay. He moves silently, avoiding the patrols and security cameras, until he reaches the sleek, black shape of a stealth ship. He climbs aboard, his hands trembling as he powers up the engines. He knows he's committing treason, that he's betraying everything he's ever fought for. But he also knows he can't turn back. As the ship lifts off, Kaid feels a sense of grim determination settle over him. He sets a course for the coordinates, his jaw clenched and his eyes hard. He doesn't know what he'll find when he gets there, what new horrors or revelations await him. But he knows he has to see it through. He has to uncover the truth behind the xenomorph once and for all. The journey takes days, the ship hurtling through the void of space at impossible speeds. Kaid spends the time in meditation, preparing himself mentally and physically for whatever lies ahead. And then finally he arrives. The planet looms before him, a blasted and barren landscape scoured clean by some ancient cataclysm. He brings the ship down on a rocky plateau, the engines whining as they power down. Kaid steps out onto the surface, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. The air is thin and cold, the sky a sickly shade of green. He can feel the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the ghosts of long-dead civilizations whispering in his ears. And there, rising from the center of the plateau, is a massive structure, a temple or a tomb carved from some strange black stone that seems to absorb the light. It pulses with an eerie, otherworldly energy, and Kaid can feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end as he approaches. He makes his way inside, his weapon drawn and his senses on high alert. The air is thick and heavy, the walls seeming to close in around him as he descends deeper into the temple. And there, in the heart of the structure, he finds it, a vast chamber filled with strange alien technology, twisted organic machines that seem to writhe and pulse with a life of their own. And at the center of it all, a massive pulsating mass of flesh and metal like some grotesque beating heart. Caid stares at it, his mind reeling with the implications. The xenomorphs, they were never the product of human experimentation. They were something else entirely. The creation of an ancient and powerful race, a species that once ruled the galaxy with an iron fist. The humans who stumbled upon their technology, they were merely pawns, unwitting dupes who unleashed a horror they could never hope to control. And now, with the xenomorph threat eliminated, the ancient race has begun to stir once more, their long-dormant ships and weapons awakening from their aeons-long slumber. Caid knows he cannot hope to stop them alone. The fate of the galaxy itself hangs in the balance, and he is but one man, one lone sniper against the might of an entire civilization. But he also knows he cannot turn back. He must see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. With trembling hands, Caid activates his communicator. He sends a message back to the Terran Defense Force, warning them of the impending invasion, urging them to prepare for the fight of their lives. And then, with a final grim smile, he steps forward, into the heart of the temple, into the waiting arms of his destiny. The final battle is a thing of legend. Caid fights with all the skill and courage of a true human sniper, his rifle blazing as he takes on the endless hordes of the ancient enemy. He is joined by the best and brightest of the Terran Defense Force, warriors from a dozen worlds united in their determination to protect the galaxy from this new and terrible threat. But even as they fight, Caid knows it is a losing battle. The ancient race is too powerful, their technology too advanced, and one by one, his comrades fall, until only Caid is left standing amidst the ruins of the temple. And then, in a final desperate act of defiance, Caid activates the temple's self-destruct mechanism, a failsafe put in place by the ancient race themselves to prevent their technology from falling into the wrong hands. The temple explodes in a blinding flash of light, taking Caid and the last of the ancient race with it, in a fiery inferno of destruction. In the aftermath of the battle, the Terran Defense Force searches the ruins of the temple for any sign of Caid, but they find nothing, no trace of the brave sniper who gave his life to save the galaxy. And so Caid passes into legend, a hero whose name is whispered in reverence and awe by all those who know of his sacrifice. Years pass, and the galaxy slowly recovers from the devastation of the ancient race's attempted return. The Terran Defense Force grows and evolves, becoming a true force for peace and justice in the universe. And on a distant planet, a statue is erected in honor of the fallen heroes of the Xenomorph War, a towering monument to the courage and sacrifice of all those who fought and died to protect the galaxy from the darkness. But even as the galaxy moves on, there are those who whisper of a strange and unsettling rumor. They say that in the heart of a black hole, where the laws of time and space break down, there is a place where the souls of fallen warriors go to rest. And there, in that timeless void, Caid and his fallen comrades watch over the galaxy they gave their lives to protect, ready to answer the call of duty once more, should the need arise. For they are the undying guardians of the galaxy, the immortal snipers who never ever back down from a fight, and though they may be gone from the world of the living, their spirits live on, a shining beacon of hope and courage in the face of the unknown. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.